Rotarians and guests, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you my guest speaker for today. I'm going to introduce Royce Rowe, a 25-year-old motorcycle racer with a passion for road racing at the Isle of Man course, TT course, which has been running now for 100 years. After competing there for 3 years, he's experienced the thrills of speeds and the spills of this quite dangerous and unforgiving course. I met Royce when he was giving a presentation similar to today to an organisation in Adelaide, and I just thought it was, you know, his experiences and the risks that these fellows put themselves to. I thought it was worth letting him talk to you so you can see how lucky you guys are. The Isle of Man TT is the ultimate must-see event for motorsport fans across the globe. It's the fastest road race in the world of any sport. Every May and June, and then again in August, the Isle of Man, which is a tiny country between England and Ireland, independent country, turns into a motorcycle festival as the world's greatest road racers compete. They ride around the mountain course, which is a 60-kilometre long beast of a course, carved out of the island's public roads. Fans and riders get to experience the unique atmosphere of this Isle of Man festival at record speeds around this course of averaging 216 kilometres an hour on a motorcycle, on two wheels. And you'll see a bit of that when Royce shows a video near the end of his talk. He races in Adelaide. Doesn't get a lot of publicity, maybe it's because I don't read the sports pages. But Royce raced at Malala in February after he had the remaining rods, plates and screws removed from both legs after he came off quite badly last year. But when he came up to the eastern door of this stadium today, I noted how he was walking straight and his legs seemed to be straight. And reading on his website this morning, he said during the Malala race that the adrenaline of the race, which he won, the South Australian Championship, the adrenaline raised during that race killed the pain from his legs. And he only had the pins and stuff out over Christmas. So it's with great pleasure I introduce to you Royce Rowe. Royce.
Yep, g'day. So my name is Royce Rowe. I'm 25 years old. I'm a hospitality worker. That's Adelaide born and bred. When I'm not serving food and wine though, I'm out on the racetrack training for the Isle of Man, hitting speeds of 280 kilometres an hour, enduring 2 Gs of force around nearly every corner, and getting so close to the ground I can nearly see all the bitumen's imperfections. And I find it all exhilarating. Today I'll be telling you about the thrills and spills of my latest trip to the Isle of Man. Firstly, I'll give you a quick insight to where my passion for racing came from. My first ride on a motorbike when I was 8 years old, being on an 80cc dirt bike. It was fun plodding around with family and friends, but it wasn't until I had my first ride on a road bike when I was 12 years of age, wearing my dad's old leathers that he wore at 22, that I was hooked. No other feeling like it, and not many 12-year-olds I knew could say that they've ridden at 150 kilometres an hour on a racetrack. With 3 generations of road racing in my blood, my family were more than willing to help me with my newfound hobby. Grandpa raced and was a bike mechanic for most of his life. He would say to me, "When you grow up, don't become a bike mechanic." because you'll end up like me, old, deaf, and a shed full of bike parts. Dad raced for a while too before kids and careers got in the way, but he still managed to win state titles, compete at Bathurst, and compete at the Isle of Man, which is where my initial interest came from. My brother also dabbled in some racing, showing natural talent in the sport, but pursued a job in motorcycling journalism and worked for the Australian Motorcycle News. For the past 10 years of my racing, I've gone from small bikes to big bikes, dabbled in some historic racing, and I've come away with years of state titles in multiple classes. It wasn't until I mentioned to my head mechanic Brian Rotter that I wanted to race at the Isle of Man, and he, with the help of Dad, made that dream a reality. Fast forward to today, and I've now competed at the Isle of Man for the third time, and many people that have raced there will warn you, once you've been bitten by the bug, and I reckon I've definitely been bitten by the bug, it's hard to stop. For those of you who aren't very familiar with the racing that takes place in the Isle of Man, I'll give you a brief rundown. I was there to race in the Manx Prix, which is different to the TT. The TT stands for Tourist Trophy, which is a race that takes place in June and is for the factory riders, riding the expensive bikes and getting paid the big bucks to do so. This has been around since 1907, with increasing numbers of people coming from all around the world wanting to compete at the TT. The Manx Gp was brought in 1923 as a feeder race for those wanting to start racing the Isle of Man. Once they were good enough from the Manx, they go up to the TT, but once you go up, you can't go back. So most racers would compete in the Manx for a couple of years before they're confident enough or score a factory ride. Both race series compete on the exact same track on the island. So this is the track outlined in red on the whole island. The race takes place on public roads, and during practice weeks, the roads are closed from public for a few hours, and on race days, nearly an entire day. The course is 37 3/4 miles long, which is around 60 k's, and a normal circuit for MotoGP is about 4 to 6 k's. So with the track being 10 times more to remember, the lead up to my first year, I was watching onboard video every day on the bus to and from work, studying on the big screen at home and asking for tips from ex-racers. But no amount of studying the video can prepare you for the bumps, jumps and brutal speeds of the Isle of Man. This is a 3D image of the island with the track outlines giving you an idea of how the bikes are required to go from sea level all the way up to 1,300 feet at the top of Snaefell Mountain. And this gives the course its nickname, the Mountain Course. So 2017's efforts didn't quite go as planned. After having a great second year, achieving 6th in the Blue Ribbon Senior event, we had high hopes, as well as being dubbed by UK Road Racing News as a rising star capable of getting on the podium. It all started off similar to our last few years, with a slight change in weaponry from the Suzuki GSXR 600 to the Triumph 675R, which is the green one in this picture, to be raced in the junior and senior classes, and I'd still be competing on the BJR Products Ducati 650 in the lightweight class. After purchasing the Triumph, we had about 5 months to set it up for the Isle of Man before we sending it overseas, and it ended up being a bit harder than first intended, with not much luck on our side, with what seemed to be nearly every long-haul trip we went on being blessed with torrential rain, whether it to be Phillip Island or Mack Park. We were running out of time to set up the bike to be race ready for the Isle of Man. A faulty fork and a crumpled camshaft tensioner didn't really help things with D-Day fast approaching. And luckily with the help of this year's team of mechanics, Dad, Brian, Lockie, Pete, Tim and Paul, we got things pretty much ready just in time to ship things off. With a few more bikes to pack this year, taking the old race Suzuki as a get-around bike and a backup race bike, and fellow countryman Paul van der Heijden taking his Ducati and Honda, we fly the bikes over, which takes about 2 to 3 weeks, giving us as much time as we can get testing the bike before we have to crate it up. Being on the other side of the world, we have to make sure we pack pretty much everything except the kitchen sink. Spare rims, spare engines, spare fairings, tyre warmers, tools, leathers, helmets, and even Mum's electric slow cooker. Flying them is a guaranteed schedule that gives us the peace of mind that they arrive on time. When we ship them back, they say it takes about 8 weeks, but it normally gets up to around 12 weeks. So with the bikes well on the way, the usual goodbyes and farewells of the Adelaide Airport ensued. The usual Guinness at Dublin Airport then followed. We got to the Isle of Man and unloaded all the bikes at the shipping depot and into the vans, and then took them to our normal cottage where the team stays and started setting up. Setting the workbench up in the laundry next to the dryers, things were pretty much set and ready to go. First day of practice arrived. Around 10-15 years ago, practice was held very early in the morning, pretty much as soon as there was enough light. Luckily, they changed it to the evenings because I'm not a very good morning person. Before racing had started, we moseyed on into the paddock to have a wander around and say hello to friends we'd met in previous years. We definitely had to find our friend Colin Stockers Stockdale, who invited us into his tent for an icy cold Cooper's Pale Ale. To say he came prepared is a bit of an understatement. The usual scrutineering was underway and the tension was starting to build. First practice session came for the Manx Prix. It was perfect weather and everyone was raring to go after being hyped up for the past few days. 6 p.m. was go time, but as the time got closer to commencement of practice, the track being a public road, there was still a car at the end of pit lane. The announcement had gone out hours prior, and with things not long to go, the van still not moved, the announcements frequented, and I think the Islanders must have forgotten when the first practice day was, because they informed us there was a car on the track at Bungalow and a car at Solby Straight, so we had to wait for all 3 cars to be towed from these locations. And this all started to eat into our practice time, but then the clerk of the course said over the tannoy, "Attention in the pits, the tow truck is removing the final car at the Bungalow." Sweet, as we thought. We started to get our helmets on and bikes warm. Attention in the pits. Wait, the tow truck is bogged. We have to wait for another tow truck to tow the tow truck out. People were staring at each other in disbelief, but it really just adds to the uniqueness of the place, as you wouldn't get this anywhere else in the world. And after much valuable time wasted, we finally got out to give the bike the berries. The Triumph was feeling good, and every session we were getting faster and faster. Speaking of the uniqueness of the place, it transcends into all aspects of the racing experience there. I took a still shot from my GoPro just to show how close the spectators can get to you while they're racing, as you can see them just there. Bike enthusiasts line the edge of the track, only inches away from the bikes with no barriers in many parts of the track. If they were to stretch their arm out in front of them, they'll be able to touch the bikes, which you wouldn't find at a normal racetrack. Locals find all sorts of spots to watch from, including this bloke standing on top of a bus stop, with the rest of these people who are standing in the pub's beer garden. Now, the Duke was running like a dream, and I started making my way up the practice times to the pointy end of the field. After getting a few laps in, most sessions went well, playing around with steering dampeners on the Triumph, not being able to get it just right, either being too hard or too soft, and messing around with a few suspension settings, only losing time to a few rained out days and a few course cleanups from accidents. So, coming to the end of the practice, we get to the eve of the first race day, doing our last minute gear prep and also dinner prep. Come race day, the Junior is the first race, which is on the Triumph. The team's all set to go on the pits, and I've been feeling comfortable on the bike leading up to the race. After a good first lap, I got a personal best lap time from a standing start of 119.9 miles per hour average lap time. Out of the 80 competitors, this put me into second place. Sitting second on the road after starting in fifth, I approach Union Mills. It's a normal corner, a right, a left, over a bridge. All the previous laps I've been doing this in third gear, and for some reason, which ultimately was the wrong choice, I chose to do it in fourth. And as I've gone over the bridge, the back end of the bike has gotten airborne, and when it's landed, it's fishtailed me with the corner starting to turn and not me starting to turn. I could see a lamppost starting to approach quite quickly. So I'm trying to get the bike over, and I'm thinking, oh darn, this is going to hurt, or something along those lines. And then, I hit the pole straight on at 166 kilometres an hour, and it sent me over, bouncing along the road, and ended up in the wall on the other side of the road. I was conscious the whole time, remember it all crystal clear, and luckily for me, I crashed out the front of a nurse's house. and she was in her front yard watching. She jumps the fence and tells me it's okay, and it kind of felt I'd just been winded. It wasn't too bad. All the flaggies start running over and they start taking your helmet and gear off, making sure you're all okay. And I saw a bloke come over to me with a big pair of scissors, and I knew exactly what he was going to do. He was going to cut off my $1,500 leather suit. So I said to him, no, it's fine, I can do it. And I unzip one bit and unzip the next. And then when I go to unzip the right bit and my hand's all floppy, I think, all right, do what you need to do. They put me on the stretcher, start taking me over to the ambulance, and while I was on the stretcher, I get the bloke next to me his attention, and I say, what's the time? And it's 12 o'clock. All right, can we hurry up? I've got another race at 4 o'clock. So they started laughing at each other, and I kind of thought, all right, I don't think that's really going to happen. Here we have the lamppost I snapped in half, cutting the power to the surrounding houses. That's the carnage of the bike. Not much was left that was salvageable. The front brake caliper went straight through the front engine casing and caused some proper internal damage. Once they got me to the hospital, they did all the x-rays and found 24 breaks throughout my body, located in both my legs, knees, wrist. The extent was too much for them to operate in the Isle of Man hospital, so they flew me out pretty much straight away in a medevac plane to be dealt by the Scousers in Liverpool, Aintree Hospital. Most of the team went back on their scheduled flights, but Mum, Dad and my girlfriend Beth stayed an extra week with me in Liverpool. My angel of a mum ended up staying the entire 3 months we were over there for. Being a university hospital, there were students observing my surgeries, and fortunately for me, my wrist surgeon was world renowned for her expertise, and they also did a great job on my legs. With only being in the early stages of recovery, the couple of weeks that I stayed only really progressed from shimmying myself across the bed to the chair, and my legs had to be dead straight with no bending of the knees, which they slowly increased the bending of my knees by 15 degrees every 2 weeks. We stayed there for a couple of weeks before being flown back to the Isle of Man, missing out on a visit from Prince William by only a couple of days. I got to the Isle of Man, stayed in hospital for a further month and a half, with the end of my stay receiving a custom wheelchair. Extended leg rests, so as I still couldn't fully bend my knees, and having the broken wrist, I couldn't use both hands to power the wheelchair. So instead of going around in circles, there was another inner bar that powered the opposite side. Getting the hang of this was pretty tricky, but I still preferred doing it myself than Mum pushing, because with the leg extensions, I was longer than a normal wheelchair, and with Mum's lack of spatial awareness, my legs caught plenty of door frames when she was driving. The dilemma of getting home was the airline had strict rules that before I could fly, I had to be able to bend my knees to be in the upright position when taking off and landing. So that was our main goal. Being in the hospital for the long period of time was pretty boring, and the biking community wanted to make my stay as comfortable as possible, which in come the Joey Dunlop Foundation, a tailor-made hotel for the disabled to come and watch the racing. As we found out, being such old buildings on the island, there aren't many disabled-friendly places. So they paid for us very kindly to stay here rather than the hospital for the last month of my stay on the island. My spirits were kept high with letters being sent from home and my workplace with gifts and care packages being sent over. Every little message sent was appreciated and helped me soldier on to get home. Now, the first question I obviously asked the doctors when this all happened was, am I ever going to be able to ride a bike again? They said, your wrist might not be able to bend enough to twist the throttle. And your knees probably won't be able to bend all the way to a racing position on the bike. They gave me exercises to do and to try and get back the bend into everything, and that's pretty much what my day consisted of. As much exercise as I could handle, because if there was one thing I knew for sure, I was getting back on that bike as soon as possible. While I was laid up in bed and not having touched the ground with my feet yet, I was speaking to Dad over the phone. He asked me, so, do you think you'll want to ride again? I said without hesitation, of course. And then he went on to say, probably assuming that would be my reply, great, we found a new bike for a great price, shall we buy it? I obviously had this conversation when Mum was out of the room. Luckily, I had 3 months to try and convince her to let me ride again, which she has, but still got a shock when we got back to Adelaide and a new bike was waiting. To help the healing process, the riding community suggested to try the hyperbaric chamber, with a few riders swearing by it. This charity-run, donation-funded hyperbaric chamber offers free help to all sorts of people with varying degrees of ailments and injuries. I'm not sure if it helped, having nothing to really compare it to, but we were going to do any little thing that could help me heal quicker. While I was there, a physio in the same building offered to help my case. The hospital's physios were a bit useless, only hearing bad things about the NHS, and they were only going to see me once a fortnight. An Aussie-loving local, Kath from Rex Physio, took it upon herself to get me on the plane home as quickly as she could. With the goal to get me home by Christmas, seeing her every day, the bill that I ended up with was £500, but Kath didn't let me pay a cent, becoming a new sponsor. The generosity of the Manx men and women living on the island was truly astounding. Many came visiting me in the hospital, taking Mum grocery shopping because she didn't have a car, taking me out to dinner for a drink or two at the pub, and to meet some of my racing heroes that lived on the island. So it finally comes to time to get on the plane, which my insurance company kindly paid for the upgrade to business class, and I ticked the carer's box on the form as well so Mum could ride up the front with me. But before I left the island, I had the taxi take me to my new pole, so I could sign my name and say my goodbyes until next time. So I got home and upgraded my wheelchair for a mobility scooter, then slowly progressed to crutches. Long and intense physio and gym work paying off. 7 months went by from the crash, and not riding a motorcycle for 7 months was my longest hiatus from riding since I was 8 years old. I was certainly a little nervous getting back on the bike, and I assured the team I was going to take it easy, which lasted about qualifying until someone overtook me, and then my first race back, 7 out of 8 races I won, getting within a second of my lap record. I knew I had it in me to make a comeback to riding. So some people don't quite understand the passion that bikers have for riding bikes, and some riders don't understand the passion racers have for racing, and some racers don't understand why anyone in their right mind would want to race at the Isle of Man. But the few that have experienced it, the rewarding sense of getting all 250 plus corners nailed, the excitement of whizzing past cheering fans only feet away from you, riding the same track that's been ridden for the past 112 years by countless heroes is what draws you to this magical place to tackle the mountain course. It wasn't until after the crash I could properly explain to people the fascination and addiction to the Isle of Man. The legendary Bill Horseman, who was lucky enough to ride the brilliant Bathurst, and as well as the Isle of Man, would say he would trade 20 Bathurst for the one Isle of Man. My dad, experiencing both, could confidently second that. People ride certain tracks to experience the thrill of certain corners. Riding the Laguna Seca, reasonably standard track until you get to the corkscrew, which people love. You have real fast straights at various circuits, tight and technical hairpins, and flip-flop corners that consecutively go from left to right, and being able to throw the bike around is not only fun, but rewarding when you get it right. The Isle of Man isn't just all these amazing corners melded into one, but it's those plus another 200 incredible corners. Yes, a few corners, being nicknamed Ballascary and Ballacry, require 2 pairs of underwear to get through. The majority of the course are just plain beautiful, clean corners to throw you and your beloved steed through. Any concerns are coated with adrenaline to not only slow things down, allowing you to hit your apexes, gear changing, braking points and throttle spots with precision, but also to fill you with that drug that can't be replicated anywhere else. I'll now show you a lap that I put together from my GoPro footage. A normal lap goes for about 18, 19 minutes, so I'll just show you the first few minutes. Yeah. So while this is playing, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take some questions. Over the bluff bridge is quite slow, really hard on the brakes just before you go over it. So I think that's going to be about maybe 80 k's, I reckon. Yeah. I'd like to, but just for something different. Right. Right, can do. Yeah, the bloke Asai Kawasaki, he's ridden a few times. You don't want it on the road because it's pretty pointless on the road. But out on the track, yeah, you can really go for it and it's pretty fun. Yeah.
Do you have any little buttons you press to change gear on your driver handles, or like a car racing?
Yeah, unlike the F1s that have that, we're all front brake on the right, clutch on the left, and your gear shifts down on your left foot. Back brake normally on your right foot, but I've got a bit of a thumb brake on my back brake on my thumb. When you're going over a lot of bumps and being quite a bumpy course, the front always wants to come up, so it's easier just to kind of feather the thumb brake.
The normal TT racings have it on the handle.
Yeah, a lot of them you'll see in their onboard videos. They'll just be using that as coming out.
Thank you for a great presentation. I admire your courage, your dare and your lunacy. The question next is, have you ridden the bend?
Yeah.
And what is it like as a course, and how's it going to be for motorcycle racing?
Awesome, really. A lot of the time to get our high-speed testing, we have to travel all the way to the Phillip Island, where when we're talking to people that live on the Isle of Man, they complain about having to go 50 kilometres down to their track, and they say that's too far. And then we tell them we have a 1,400 round kilometre trip just to do a bit of testing. So Phillip Island's been great, and now Tailem Bend, yeah, it's pretty much just as good and quite convenient for us just to go over and do some testing and all that kind of stuff. But for motorcycles, yeah, it's great. Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say I love the Triumph as well. I've got a 675 myself. But just more on the thing, how does your insurance cover so much? Because as soon as you say you do extreme sports, whether it be skydiving or motorcycling, especially racing, they shut you down pretty quick.
Yeah. So we have to get special insurance before you're allowed to race on Isle of Man. It's always been a real headache because they don't get many people from Australia going over and racing there. So they're not always prepared for us, and our level of insurance aren't always quite high enough. So we normally take out the insurance with like the FIM and all that kind of stuff, which is the overseas, which gives us enough insurance that we need. And obviously after the crash I'm probably going to have to be paying a bit of a premium now. But yeah, the insurance company looked after us really, really well. We were quite lucky. They paid for pretty much everything. Just before Christmas when we got back from the crash, they sent us a bill for about £20,000 to replace all the damages and the Medivac things and all that kind of stuff, but insurance covered it all luckily.
What's your ambition in motorcycle racing?
So since I've been young, it's always kind of been the Isle of Man, seeing all the memorabilia of Dad racing there. I've always had a keen interest on it. And this track compared to like circuits that the MotoGP guys are on, I find those just a little bit boring now. So ultimately, we're going back there in August this year to have another go at it, a bit of unfinished business, and we're quietly confident that we'll be able to get a podium result. Ultimately, next year we're going to go to the TT with the big guys, and yeah, have a crack, which has been my goal since a long time.
Can I ask one more question? Is anyone racing electric bikes in this?
Yeah, I think for the past maybe even more than 4 years, but they call it the TT0. They only can make one lap around, same as 20 minutes, and the battery packs don't last longer than that. But the speeds that they're getting up to, pretty crazy. they're nearly doing as quick as on these bikes, on the electric bikes. So it's all pretty impressive. A lot of universities are from all around the world are bringing their bikes to the Isle of Man to go.
Royce, it might sound a bit silly because you're 250 plus corners and lots of scenery and so on, lots of things to be thinking about.
Yeah.
But how do you concentrate? How do you stop yourself zoning out? Because you're going through a lot of open fields and coastal views. And
It's a good question. In a way, you got to concentrate. If you're not, you're pretty much crashing. So to ensure that you can concentrate, you've got to be mentally fit, and then also very, very physically fit, that you can't start thinking, oh, I'm hurting, or how much longer is left. So you've got to be as fit as you can be, and then mentally just thinking 3 steps ahead the whole time. As I said, I was watching my videos religiously. I've got a big notebook that I take lots of notes in, and then when you're on the track, you're thinking, okay, next corner's coming up, next corner's coming up. And the hard thing is, you come to a corner and you think, oh yeah, I should be maybe 5 centimetres over to the left, and that'll be a bit quicker next time. But then you need to remember that 18 minutes later, when you come around to that spot again, you're like, right, what was I going to try? Oh yeah, it's that. So it can be pretty tricky and mentally straining, but yeah, doable. So for the Manx Gp, it's a 4-lap race. For the TT guys, they do 6. We do 2 laps, come in, refuel. We have to blow out our tanks to have enough petrol to make it around for the 2 laps, and it's about 20 litres for the 2 laps. And then in the pits, you might have seen from the picture before, everyone has the same gravity-fed fuel pumps, so everyone's in the same boat when they're refueling. So real old school, bang, petrol pump, and then off you go.
Yeah, hi Royce, that was amazing, you're incredible. And I just want to know, how do you mentally get yourself fit for this type of thing, and was there any techniques that you used, particularly after the accident, which is quite bad, to now be, I want to go back and do it again?
Yeah, I suppose luckily for me, I've always been a pretty positive kind of guy, and mentally I was ready to get back on that bike the next day after the crash. So it was just pretty much keeping that goal in mind and thinking, I want to get back on the bike. And I suppose it's not for everybody, which is why so many of the circuit races and MotoGP guys kind of say, nah, I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole and just leave it to us guys. So it's pretty humbling and pretty cool.
Thank you very much for that wonderful talk. You know, as you go through life, you have certain experiences that you never forget, and people that you never forget. I will never forget Royce's talk to us today.
Thank you.
It's been absolutely enthralling.
Cheers.
Thank you very much for doing that.
All right, thanks for having me.